Everyone, Suzanne, if you are on, or I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please, Suzanne.
Councilor Bosco.
No,
Councilor Spitalo.
Here.
Councilor Hendler.
Here.
Councilor Keiner.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Mancini.
Here.
Councilor Muller.
Here.
Councilor Riley.
Here.
Councilor Srazzo. Deputy Mayor Suzak. Here. Councilor Ungary.
Here.
I'm not sure, is Councilor Bosco absent or here?
He'll be late, but he's not here right now.
Okay, thank you. There's 9 members present, 2 are absent.
Thanks, Suzanne. Again, we welcome our special guest for the night. Moving on to item 2, BL Companies, Mr. John Ireland, to discuss the final master plan on municipal buildings. Welcome, sir. If you have anything to present, I don't know, Paul, I'm assuming he'll be able to do it.
Yes, he should be fine. Yep.
So, Mr. Ireland, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As introduced, my name is John Ireland. I am a licensed architect with BL Companies, and I am located in our Meriden office. Before I get started, I do want to thank you for inviting me this evening. I know your time is valuable both to me and to BL Companies, and I do appreciate being here. I particularly want to thank Donald Nunes and Jeffrey Leonowitz for their tireless efforts, insights, and assistance in bringing this forth this evening. And then I want to thank Donna Suzak and the entire Joint Facilities Committee, who over the last year and a half have worked closely to provide review guidance, ultimately the approval through their service to the town, with what I think was an inclusive approach of ideas and their contacts. So with that, I will get us started and share the screen and put the presentation full screen. Is everybody able to see that?
Yeah, looks good. Thank you.
Okay. So the process began about a year and a half ago, and this was the RFP statement that the town put out that we responded to, interviewed to, and started probably about a month or 2 after that date in February of 2019. We began with a collective mission statement, and we said that we would establish, prioritize, schedule, and ultimately budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, the most cost-effective use of 10 of the town facilities. We would look at improvements for those facilities or possibly the replacement of those facilities, create a formwork for the town's capital plan over the next 10 years. Our mission statement together was further defined to be conscious where there may be a potential increase in the tax burden to the property owners of Enfield, to limit the growth of expenses wherever possible, to enhance and ultimately to enhance the town's services through the use of these facilities. So with that, here are the 10 properties we focused on. Starting in the upper left, as you know, Town Hall, social services, buildings and grounds, and the Thomas Alcorn former school building here. On the east side of the town, the public safety or police complex, DPW Jablonski facilities, and the Enfield Annex. Kind of central to this map, the Central Library, emergency medical services here, and finally, animal control. So what we put together, and we're going to focus on the first part and spend quite a bit of time and focus on Jablonski and the DPW facility. I'd suggest, if it's all right with you, that we hold the questions till the end. I can navigate back to pieces of the show, or if there's a preference and someone would like to pause, we can pause at any time. Each of the 10 facilities is first put forth based on the recommendations that we collectively came to. It will also include a list of what we call enabling projects, projects that have to occur to allow this facility to move forward. We then have some graphics to show you, and we close each of the facilities with the timeline. So with that, I will look at the recommendations and present those for the Jablonski facility. The first and probably one of the most important things to do up front is to combine all 7 of the town properties that we focused on into one parcel. And there's a lot of good reasons to do that. And we'll show you why we recommend that. We'll begin with fairly straightforward project, and that's the fueling facility. You have two current fueling facilities, one at the Jablonski facility and one at Emergency Services. And those collectively, as you know, the licenses are renewed roughly on an annual basis, but the licenses are coming due again, and it's time to move that part of the project forward. We're proposing to build an addition on the facility for buildings and grounds, and then renovate and update the entire facility. The site, we're proposing new parking with site drives and a fairly, we think, creative idea of putting photovoltaic arrays over the covered parking, which someday may lead to the charging of town vehicles. We're proposing to move and build a new animal control facility on this newly combined central facility site. And then after further study, the potential to put EMS services, either satellite or central, to this site. So the enabling projects are, as noted, move buildings and grounds, and we'll come back to their site in the second part of this presentation. Move emergency services fueling only, and connect the two facilities, and we'll show you that. Ultimately move the animal shelter to the central facility, and then make plans for and eventually add EMS to this central facility site. So what does that look like? So here is an aerial view, a site plan, if you will. In the lighter color, there is topography, or the rise and fall of the ground underneath. The heavier dashed double dot lines are the property lines. And as you can see, the current DPW facility, and we'll zoom in on this in a minute, is on this rectangular parcel here, and is quite frankly using every inch of that parcel. So combining all of these parcels into one central facility allows a lot of things to occur. One, potentially create a drive. This would be a private drive, which would connect the emergency services here on Elm Street to the fueling facility. And here is the fueling facility. So that is on the more forward piece of the Moody Road property. And we're going to see views of this and the concept there. What that will do is allow for fueling of all town vehicles. A lot of the maintenance and overhaul of the vehicles already are happening on this facility, but Emergency Services has their own fueling here. And again, we're going to come back to their site in the second half of this presentation. So we're really focused on DPW and combining those facilities. So I'm going to keep moving here. This is the current aerial view, and for the first time, you're seeing some color added to the floor plan. And those are the proposed addition. There's a dashed line here, which runs around, over, and across. And the idea is to first infill the courtyard, interconnect the corridors, and then build a new entry here at the front. The current entry, for those that know it, some of you know it very well, the current entry is here. New entry here, and we'll talk more how that functions, and then continue the garage service bays here with some potential for some higher bay racking in that location. So we chose to take this plan further than a typical master plan for a lot of good reasons. One, to start to work out how well this might or might not function, and after all this time, we think it functions very well, and so does the committee. And so do the folks at DPW. It's flexible enough that it starts to look at public and private, in their town facilities. I use the word private, but service by town staff versus public accessing the building, and allows things potentially to obviously continue in operations and build an addition that would limit the amount of disturbance to the building. So again, we can come back to the details, but we wanted to show you the floor plan and show you some aspects of the floor plan. As we look at the public accessing this floor plan, there are doors configured here and here. So a large meeting room here, a vestibule with a window reception here. So even though I'm coming to the facility, quite frankly, I may not need to go inside and meet. I may be able to pick up forms, drop off information, pick up information here at the window, at either window. And we're still looking at this floor plan. Again, we're not trying to solve it here as a master plan. We're trying to put forth the elements that cause it to work. Then we have public restrooms and a series of either meeting spaces or offices. The balance then is the staff space to keep DPW and building and grounds going. We're looking at infilling the courtyard to make a more robust reporting area, service area, everything from lunchroom to, at times, as you know, the operations here go 24/7. So this would serve those needs. And again, during the day and the regular hours would function as cafeteria and break room. Can also serve as a ready room or an on-call room too, large enough in scale. So the gross area of the existing facility is about 41,000 square feet. The proposed addition is about 15. That was the program needs of buildings and grounds to bring this facility up to approximately 57, just under 60,000 square feet. So what could this look like? Again, we took this particular aspect of it. It's important enough both to the committee and to everyone to look at some of the functional ways that this may work. And we've created, you'll see in this view, coming in off of Lego Way, the one-way in fueling and one-way out. We still have a one-way delivery drive here. The current DPW Jablonski facility receives material all day long. Vehicles circulate here. It may be as simple as a drop-off, or a lot of the service and a lot of the activity is around on the side of the building at the service bays. We're going to look a little bit more at the building addition there, but this is the first view of what the potential. And again, we're not trying to solve this right now. We're trying to put forth the concepts so that you can see them. So with that, we're starting to drive down the drive, looking at the new public entry, the fueling facility, above ground tanks, again, as a concept, vehicle parking, town vehicle parking here under the photovoltaic canopy. As we swing around after we've fueled our vehicle, we go out the exit drive here, and this is also a view of the delivery and service lane here. So with that, I drive on out. Now, if I'm coming from the public, I would park here in this lot, and there is a new entry with a covering perhaps, and that was the vestibule I described where I could come in, engage at the window, go through any paperwork, or if I'm waiting, wait for a meeting or wait to come to be greeted. Again, the idea is to separate public from the functional aspects. The original and the current, I should say, I'm already, the current entry is configured here. And you can see that the concept that's presented here is to continue the same type of construction so that when it's complete, it would blend together as one facility. And there's the entry. Again, zooming up to the aerial view, looking at Moody Road here, Lego Way here, and Elm is over here in the distance, and that would eventually connect over in time. So with that, here is the current aerial view, and I do sincerely believe that this site is currently used in its entirety. There isn't really room for anything else to occur there. And this predates the truck wash, which is configured here, this aerial view. Here's the site, again, the truck wash configured here. And quite frankly, each of the sites we do a zoning analysis. And what this shows you is that it is built out to the maximum extent possible. So by combining these into a combined central facility, you'll be good stewards of your own regulations to allow things to grow on these combined sites. Buildings we've put together in terms of square footage, and actually you have these AutoCAD drawings now for your internal use. So what does that look like in a timeline? And after this, I'm going to pause. So year one, we're recommending that you move forward with consolidating the sites through the planning and zoning approval process. You begin Buildings and Grounds to move in on a temporary basis. And again, we're going to come back to that facility and see what effect that would have on that property. They would move in here, by the way, and again, we will talk a little bit about the annex. Currently, the shop of Buildings and Grounds is configured over there. Year one, there is a need to locate the emergency services. That comes due, I believe, next year. So year one would be to move that above ground fueling tank to this site, and then also begin the actual design. We have put forth a conceptual design, but begin the detailed design for the site and for the building. And that is a good, probably about a year process. Year two would be to finalize the design, the site, and the building, including phasing. I think, again, a lot of thought needs to be given of how to phase this to keep DPW, to keep the Jablonski facility in operation 24/7. And then the discussion has been to go to a publicly bid process for construction to a GC. So in year two, you finalize the design, you construct, and move the animal control facility. And again, we're going to come to that facility later. Year three would be the phase construction, 3 and 4. And we think it is somewhere in the 2-year timeline to construct this complex of a renovation and improvement. Year 5 would be perhaps to connect the emergency services with the central facility and build the roadway. And in year 5, begin to look at the master planning for satellite or EMS. The concept is, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, is it better to have a central EMS or is it better to have satellite EMS? And again, we're not trying to solve that. We're saying that on this new central facility site, you now have enough space to look at doing that. It also makes sense from a fueling and vehicle maintenance standpoint. And so with that, I know I've talked quite a bit. I'm going to pause and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ireland. I will open it up to the folks on the committee first. So Councilor Sakala, we'll go Councilor Riley, then Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Just thank you so far. This has been a project that I know that has been in the works for a while. BL came in to do sort of a comprehensive analysis of all of our buildings, and this is what we've really been focusing on, trying to get a lot of B&G and DPW under one roof as to not try to have it spread out all over town. So I think this is a great place to start. And you'll see, I think, later on in the presentation that we have some other ideas, but this is really, I think, a main focus. And you guys have seen the Buildings and Grounds building down here, and it's kind of deplorable. So I think this is a great place to start, and it would be good to be able to have the fueling station and have it connected to the police station. So, yeah, so far so good.
Thank you, Councilor Riley.
I just want to say, I think that this part of the presentation is something to definitely focus on and keep in the front of your minds, because out of all the things that we have, this is probably the easiest jump to make, and it's the most sense, and we can, provide a pretty good facility with all of this that covers all of our basic needs with DPW. So thank you for the presentation, and I can't wait to see the rest of it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Suzak, you have any questions or comments?
I guess my comment, Facilities has been working on this for a long time. We started with Matt Koppler when he was here. And it just seems that this is one of the things that all the town managers that I have had the pleasure to work with have wanted this DPW to be a combined site. I mean, that was the reason for the purchase of the land all around the Jablonski. I mean, there's been a lot of insight, and also from listening to Donald and Jeff, that, they take away a lot of stuff from this that they can do within their budget at budget time. And that's really, it's refreshing to hear, because, the main part, when we get to the real nitty gritty part of it, it will require a referendum, but it's nice to always know that we have stuff that we can do without going to referendum. And also Cindy is on the committee, so I'll turn it over to her.
Sorry about that, Councilor Mangini. You have the floor if you have any comments or questions. Sorry about that.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly comment that the committee has worked incredibly hard, and Don, under your direction, thank you for all your hard work. Just a question I have with regards to solar panels. Is solar panels a part of, phasing into any of the construction of the plan, number one? And then secondly, I know, we mentioned people able to drive up and present, materials instead of having to go into the buildings, which I think is great, especially with the COVID climate that we're in. And I'm sure we probably are looking at those features, but I just wanted to get some feedback on that. Thank you.
You want me to address that?
Yeah, you want to address it now?
Address
Go
that
ahead.
now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So the photovoltaic, the solar panels, we know we could put on a new structure. We want to pause before we say we could put them on the existing structure. But again, now would be an ideal time. So to do that, there's a little bit more work, a look at it structurally. But yes, that is the concept. I think now's the time in any construction project, but particularly here, where I think it is a good visual example of this is what the town can do to lower some of the tax burden by supplementing with photovoltaic with the ability to generate electricity. As far as, yes, the interface with the public, I think everybody appreciates not having to go, well, particularly now, but even prior to that, to get town services. The smoother it is for me and the easier it is for me, the more I appreciate that. And I think, obviously, the folks in Enfield are the same way. In other words, if I could go to a service window, there's someone there who understands, hey, you're here to, talk about the recycling program, or you're here to pick up this or that, or you're here to fill out a form. Again, that was the concept, to create it easy, visible, and the ability for the public to use the facility. Conversely, if I'm there to stay and I'm there for a meeting, it's also hopefully just as easy. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you addressing the questions.
Councilor Kiner on the phone. Any questions? Councilor Kiner?
Bill, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was still on mute. Yeah, generally speaking, I really like the idea of the central location. And as time goes on, I know it's too early to discuss this now, but obviously we have to talk about costs. And my major question is going to be, as time goes on, how cost effective this program is going to be, for the taxpayers of Enfield. But I've got to compliment the Mr. Ireland. I have to compliment the committee on putting this together, Joint Facilities Committee. You guys did an incredible job, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Unless there's any other specific, can we hold it to the end? Unless you got a specific question, I'd like to see the rest, unless you guys, so let Mr. Ireland finish, but going, anyone have any questions specifically on his presentation so far? So I have some questions, but I think it may get answers as we move forward. And Suzanne, just for the record, Councilor Sparazza has joined the meeting. Mr. Ireland, you're welcome to continue, sir.
Thank you, sir. Before I go, just to address the cost, one of the things we talked to the committee about is everybody remembers the first number they hear. So we were conscious about putting this together in a format that says, here is the master plan. Now let's start to look at the cost. So I did want to be conscious of that because it is in the original mission statement. So with that, let's take a look at the other 9 facilities. So we're going to start buildings and grounds and work our way down. I won't take the time to read them because you're going to see them, and let's keep things moving. So buildings and grounds on Prospect Street. Ultimately, our recommendation is to close this facility and, as noted, move buildings and grounds to the Jablonski facility, the central facility, and where appropriate, some of them to the Enfield Annex, and we're going to talk about that. we still need to finalize staff and personnel program for exactly the relocation, and it'll be relocated, we're recommending right away. In other words, let's not wait until the construction is done. The time is now. Buildings and Ground has been on, and we'll see it, has been on a site that, again, if they're utilizing every inch at the Jablonski, they're probably using every 2 millimeter there on Prospect Street. So finalize the inventory of the vehicles, the equipment stored there, et cetera, and then identify how best to move the folks right now to Jablonski and to the Enfield Annex, both vehicles, personnel, and equipment. There's quite a bit of equipment there, and some of it's even stacked up in storage. So we need to look at the Enfield Annex, that should say. Town Hall is incorrect. The Enfield Annex, and I apologize. And Jablonski and Buildings and Grounds to move on a temporary basis, design and construct the addition, and then finally move the folks in and close the 52 Prospect Street facility. So here it is in aerial view, and we'll look at the plan in one second. But all of this is being used in the roughly 2 combined buildings, but in the roughly 3 buildings there on site. So here is the quick zoning analysis, and by quick I mean that you can see that the building is taxing both setbacks. Here's the rear yard setback, side yard setback, and the buildable area. And it's full. In other words, we're parking here. We've got equipment, configured all the way around the site. So there really isn't an opportunity to expand this facility, and it's been well used. Certainly the town has gotten their money's worth, so to speak, out of this facility so far. And its location makes it challenging to bring people together under one roof. And again, there's some economy to be had there of having all of the town, let's call them Buildings and Grounds, maintenance, DPW under one roof. So again, the building's roughly 10,700, and if you recall, we're proposing roughly 15,000 square feet to be added to Jablonski. So that would incorporate this 10,000 plus what's, I'm going to call it shoehorned in here, really packed into this site. So year one would be to do the inventory and move the folks out and the equipment over to Jablonski and the annex, and then turn this over to the town attorney and to sell this property. So I think, does it make sense to get on through all the next 8 properties and then open it up?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yep.
Okay. So the annex, the Enfield Annex, as you know, is, one, it's a large-scale facility, and there have been other studies. We've taken those into consideration. We've looked at options, and we are proposing a new conceptual design to the site and the building to try to fully utilize the building. It, quite frankly, is underutilized right now. We want to finally review and approve. We're going to put a concept out there this evening, and we've been working with the facilities committee. That is a change, quite frankly, and change is a challenge. So we're going to look to review and approve that concept. The building still needs to be formally programmed. By that, we mean each and every use and how it would fit, both in there and proposed. And the town needs to, town needs to go through a process to define and operate office space. There have been discussions of potential rental, and we're not going to try to solve that in the master plan. However, using other towns and cities as models, even if it is rented for an operation fee or a utility fee, towns can enter into some form of, quote, rental agreement. And I don't think rental in the sense that a town is operating rental office. It's in the sense of here's office space. If it makes sense legislatively, legally, and functionally, then there is going to be office space available. By the way, it's a great building. Maintain the grounds, the playing fields, the entire site. We think it makes an ideal place for town hall to do document retention. The former locker room area downstairs, quite frankly, is well built. It's windowless. It can be easily turned into something that would meet the state standards and your town standards for document retention. Proposing to move Parks and Recs from the Lamagna Center to the annex, some of them, and we want to talk more in detail about that. Move some of the buildings and grounds, particularly the wood shop is already there, keep them there at the annex until they can be relocated to the central facility. So what does that look like? We chose to, again, put forth a design concept here. And again, we're not trying to solve it, but we are conscious of this building having a fairly deep core to depth ratio. So what do I mean by that? When I'm standing in the middle of this building, I can't see daylight. And so the idea here is that if you know the building, and we'll see it in aerial view, there are sections that already have very narrow, high clear story window, and then it doesn't involve the rest of the building structure. So it's looking at taking that section out and introducing glazing here. So that's the concept. Again, enough space out front. We're not trying to design it at this time. We're trying to say this could in fact become a newer entry to the building off of Moody Road. So that's the end we're looking at, and we're going to look at that in plan. But that's the concept that's put forth. So here potentially is what an office space could look like in there when you remove that section of windows. So this is to scale. This is a concept that could become a reality if you so choose. We would then look to borrow daylight from the interior, and here's where probably the most radical part of this concept comes. We're proposing to create a clear story where the library space currently is, that's skylit from above, that allows daylight in. And so as you can see, and I'm going to toggle back to that office, but this is what I meant by the core. Right now, there is no daylight here. And so if I'm, oops, I went the wrong way, I apologize. If I'm in the office looking out with these clear story windows, I can start to see daylight in these offices. And so that concept is accomplished by opening the middle of this building up and shortening the depth to the core and creating an inner courtyard here, or a walkway, sorry, to this courtyard. So we put that concept forth. Here's the sections I was talking about. I know it's hard to see, and you can certainly look at it on your own, but the horizontal windows here, there's 3 of them in each of these bays. Those would be removed, and we think, again, conceptually, it would be easy to do. This section here where the skylights are is the section we had proposed to remove. Keep the mechanical penthouse and open this up here. So that's the concept. Site's a beautiful site. It's very well organized, great for sports. As you know, it functions very well as a high school. By the way, it can't really return for school use without a substantial investment. So in bringing it up to current school standards, it can certainly function as athletics. It can certainly function as limited use, but to return it to a school, you know, those days are gone. But continue to use the athletic fields, continue to use the building. Again, well planned, well laid out, room for expansion here and new entry possibly here. And we'll see that in the floor plans. So the building gross area is 210,000 square feet on 3 levels. And the current uses of the 210 are laid out here. And we won't try to go through them all this evening, but you have a section of adult education. We nicknamed it Board of Ed. It really should say that it is public schools and their use by the rec department. CNA, Buzz Robotics, B&G Electrical. There is a large area in green not really in use. Some file storage and admin, building support. So in our diagrams, we're starting to gray out areas that are building support, stairs, elevators, etc. And then we're starting to call out circulation as a separate number. So you're really looking at the usable space. So we took that into consideration, and here's what is proposed. And there's an intentional dashed line across here. And this is the office space section of the building. There's enough space to keep everything that's there now, add the town hall record storage, to this lower level here in the former varsity locker rooms, still keep all functions and create this office space in this section of the building on 3 floors. So that's what's proposed. This was not taken lightly by the facilities committee. You know, there is a lot of debate, and I'm sure there'll continue to be a lot of debate about how best to use this building. But we believe that there will always be a need for some form of office space, whether it's used by the town or used by the quasi-town functions, and that the idea of returning it to a strict educational program is not a good idea. So the recommendation there is for the office space. Year 1, we recommend that the town hall document retention be firmed up and planned and designed. You would start then year 1 looking at any kind of formal agreement or the use and policy of these offices. Again, we're not going to try to solve that in this master plan. Move Parks and Rec to free up some space at Lamagna, and then move some of buildings and grounds to the Enfield Annex. Year 2, construct that document retention. By the way, it is intentionally on the ground floor. It is near a loading area. It would facilitate the movement out of, we're going to see it in a minute, out of the town hall attic, but to a ground floor location, which will make it much easier on document retention handling. And then perhaps in year 3 and 4, construct and restack the building. So that's the Enfield Annex. Next, we move to the Thomas Alcorn building, and this also former school is a great building on a great site. We think it can be used more efficiently, and want to encourage the use of a more detailed program for town and Enfield public schools. And I think the functions that are narrowed down can coexist and work well together. As I said, the staff to square foot area suggested that utilization is fairly low, and we'll look at that. And that the cafeteria right now is probably one of the easiest areas to configure into office space. So first enabling project is to identify what other functions, town functions, could work well with the Enfield Public Schools. Perhaps move some of the social service offices here. And I want to be clear, it is the offices, and it's the offices that may serve the Enfield Public School function that is there now. Again, there could be some good synergy there. And then plan that site and that building for long-term use, because I said it's a great building, and we're going to see it in a minute. So here is the aerial view. It's configured on roughly 3 floors, a lot of good open space. There is currently a look at how best to utilize the basketball courts, how much parking is needed, and quite frankly, we'll see in the next, there is space here available, and not trying to solve it, trying to point out that there's a lot of good open space. This building is a good neighbor to the residential. It does allow for expansion. It can grow on this site, has good access, and good potential for expansion as you plan out over time. So the building configures here, it's roughly 53,000 square feet. It is broken down like this. About half of the space is on the first floor, the 25,000 square feet. Enfield TV is here, about 1,000 square feet. And then public schools and public administration, you'll see in these next 3 slides, is in the salmon or red color, and then the blue is the administration, and then on the upper floor is PD. We do separate out the building support, stairs and mechanical spaces and circulation. So these are the numbers for usable space in the total building of 52,000. On the second floor, the floor plan gets a little more constrained, 17,000 open space here, and on the third floor is entirely PD and IT for the town. So what do I mean by utilization? One of the ways to look at it is to take the usable, and again, it's a gross usable, so it's a large number, and divide it by the number of people that are using it. And it's a little bit on the generous side, 1,000 square feet, roughly 1,000 square feet is the average. A lot of that is understandable, and let me explain for a couple of reasons. One, of course, IT and the police department, and the technical aspect of IT does not lend itself well to being compact. It is the reuse of a school. So on the left, you'll see a concept. You can take classrooms and configure them into 3 offices. You could take cafeteria and configure it into open office space, and thereby increase the population. Again, we're not trying to solve it. Again, our charge was to try to find effective ways of utilizing the buildings. We think this is a great building and can be enhanced. The utilization can only get better from here. So year 1 is to look at social services, what could move there and what could co-locate well. And then in years 2 through 5 is to identify the additional programs and the growth of this facility. Because again, great location, great building, great site. So next we move to social services. Our recommendation is to ultimately close this facility and sell it. To do that, there are a number of things that need to be looked at. What of these functions can go to Thomas Alcorn? What can move to the Lamagna Center? And yes, we are aware of other projects there at the center of town. We haven't been directly involved with them, but we are quite aware of them, and there may be an opportunity to move some of the social services there and keep them. The committee was very strong about the idea of keeping social services in the center of town, even though this site is looked to be sold. So we're not selling social services. I want to be clear on that. We're selling the site and retaining social services and looking at the best way to locate them within the town. So here is the aerial view of the building. Again, good building in great shape. It is somewhat on its own, if you will. In other words, it's there at the center of town, but as you can see, it's next to the church in a residential neighborhood set back. We think it's a fairly saleable property. It's 6,000 square feet and was built and functions well. Again, the charge was to look at optimizing the use of all of the town property. And this one could be sold and not miss a beat in utilization. So that's the...
Mr.
Yes,
Allen,
sir,
sorry
yes.
to cut you off. I'd like to give you a 10-minute warning. I want to make sure I have at least 10 minutes for
Okay.
folks to have the last questions who didn't get a chance. And we have a hard stop at 7, so I just want to, I'm not trying to move you along, but just want to give you, so I want to make sure people have a chance to ask
appreciate it.
questions. All right, thank you.
And I'll move. I try not to talk fast, so I will, and I'll try to summarize. Thank you. So town hall. I think the biggest focus here is on that 3rd floor attic. It's not a good spot to store your records. It's not big enough. It's not conditioned. It's not in protected construction, and you've used it. It's full. So if space becomes available that could become swing space that can start to look at, again, other projects going on in town, that could stage them so that they could go over to the Enfield Annex. That's the basic plan in a nutshell there in the master plan for the town hall. Again, great building. We all know it works well. No real change needed there. Yes, we're aware of other potential connections and projects there. No need really to change anything here. So it's really about document retention and migrating that to the Enfield Annex. Next, animal control. I think the biggest reason to move this is finding it, quite frankly. It's not that accessible for the public. That, and it's in a small scale building, and it's another opportunity to close a functioning facility that you're paying to operate. Again, bring that function up to the central facility. So here it is down there on Parsons next to the river. And there is the site. It could combine with wastewater treatment. It is a site that is zoned residential, believe it or not, down in that zone. I think it exists by special exception. But again, we're looking to close this property. And the timeline would be to begin to look at that right away, plan that, and construct it on the newly consolidated. By year 2, we believe you'll have the central facility properties consolidated. So public service, again, functions well, great location. There is a mandate through an agreement they've entered into for an operational vehicle that should be covered. So we think that the most effective way to do that is to put an unconditioned. So it's a pre-engineered metal building covering over this. You could certainly put a temporary covering, but again, I think it's clear that emergency and police operations are always going to have command vehicles, vehicles that need to be covered, vehicles that should remain there next to their facility, and putting a modest, again, a very modest, unconditioned, and I say unconditioned, it's not heated or cooled. It is a covering to preserve the long-term use of that vehicle. We talked about interconnection, and then we talked about the underground fuel tanks moving above ground and moving up to the central facility. So those are the projects necessary to move that along. The drive, by the way, is aligned here, and our civil engineers have looked at that, both the alignment of that drive and then the topography and crossing the wetlands. So that's what the facility looks like. Again, kind of working our way across here, across the wetlands here and interconnecting. Building works well, doesn't need, I mean, it can, The object here was not to study police functions in this building. It was to study the overall site and the combinations of the site. So like any public safety complex, there is always a need to look at it long-term as far as functional use. And again, we didn't dive into that under this master plan. 25,000 square foot facility. Planning, the timeline is to plan next year to move those tanks from below ground to above ground, plan that pre-engineered building, and then construct it. And then perhaps in year 5, connect the two, this site with the Jablonski site. Emergency medical services, and we looked quite closely at this, and it's not a site we recommend expanding on. You'll see it, it's very constrained. It also has a history, and there have been traffic studies, and therefore additional traffic is not recommended at this site. Could it be a good satellite site? Yes. Could it be the central site? Possibly, with the same vehicle count. So, but now you have options. Now you have the option of moving this or central, and or this becomes satellite, or satellite at the central facility. So here is emergency medical services. Again, it uses every inch of this site. It is unfortunately not directly aligned with this intersection. I think that's one of the concerns with traffic, this intersection as well. So it is combined, by the way, on one greater site. So it's not an easy equation to look at. It's kind of over the setbacks. And again, we don't recommend expanding there. However, it can remain and function well. It's a beautiful, streetscape, and the building functions well as it stands today. About 4,000 square feet. You probably need more in the long term. And so that's what this is about, is beginning in the near future to do a detailed study of emergency medical services townwide. Last, and I don't mean least, is Central Library. But here again, you've got a great facility. It functions well. And we really think continue that. Take a look at identifying what the library needs, what the community needs, and what the town needs at the Central Library. Again, in these current times, it's great to have a building that's functioned and, can be an alternate location for use. There is some ability for a little bit of expansion out here in the front yard on Middle Road. But again, it's well used, great building, well maintained, does have a little bit of space, sorry, wrong way, in the lower level. Egress is always a challenge from the lower level. Egress, and by that I mean access and accessibility, stairs, so on and so forth. But again, you've got a great building here that has a total of just under 40,000 square feet. So we recommend that remains. And with that, I think I have allowed enough time for questions. So
Well done.
I will start.
I appreciate it. Well done. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it, Mr. Ireland. Any questions from anyone who didn't answer prior? And hearing Councilor Muller.
I had a quick question about social services. Moving it from the center of town, would that be moving it away from the people that need it the most down this area?
Councilman Miller, I think the recommendation is to keep things in the center of town.
Oh, thank
and
you.
only migrate, keep center of town, again, between projects that are going on in the Lamagna Center. And if there is a synergy, in other words, if there are social services for the current public schools program at the Alcorn Center that would work well together, then those offices could move to that facility. So that was the recommendation, and Councilman Muller.
Oh,
So
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Anyone else in the council chambers before I open up to the committee members? I'll save my questions for last. No questions? I'll start, Councilor Sakala.
Nothing, this is, again, a very large scale project broken down into a lot of different pieces. And I can tell you that really where the building committee has been focusing is the Jablonski Center and Buildings and Grounds. And to be very truthful, there has been a lot of lively discussion and some disagreement on some of these buildings on what to do. But again, like Charlotte said, this is really something we want to bring to you guys and focus, at least right now, on getting DPW all together under one roof.
Thank you. Councilor Riley, any other comments or questions?
The only other comment that I have, and we talked about it at length at the last facilities meeting, was that, we've been talking about this for quite some time now, and obviously we can't move and fix all of the problems in, the next year, but we would like to make sure that somehow, in some way, we keep moving on this, because we don't want to see it just, oh, great presentation, and then nothing happens. We want to see, us keep talking about it and how we can make it work for the town. But that's the only other thing I have to add. But
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Suzak, any comments or questions?
I'd just like to thank John, great presentation. I mean, this has been a lot of work by the committee. And I think that these all move forward by the committee meeting. There are 2 meetings a month religiously. And looking at our DPW staff, looking at what's in there and putting in their budgets what they can do and start us moving in the direction that we need to.
Thank you. Councilor Mangini, any comments or questions?
Just wanted to say thank you. It was a very well thought out, well put together presentation.
Thank you. Councilor Keiner, want to make sure any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions, Mr. Mayor. Just thank you to the Joint Facilities Committee and to Mr. Ireland. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ireland, I actually had a couple questions. So the archive, I know it's in conceptual. With it being, I know the locker room very well down at the annex. Will there be the ability to actually have one of those, the kind of the modern type archives where you again sort of do it by electronics instead of folks, where the public could go in and actually look for, if they were looking for archives, that sort of thing?
The potential is there, yes. The floor is loaded, so in other words, you could do dense storage as well. As far as we haven't really
Got it, yep.
looked at a public window access, but certainly can be planned that way.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, I think it's a great idea, and it's actually a perfect location too, by the way.
Thank you.
So, and I think I agree with the other counselors that it makes sense now to start the movement over to the Jablonski, where we have a central town operation. Really, is what it, with the senior center, which I know wasn't part of the presentation, but the police, the police department, and possibly moving EMS over there. I think what has to happen as well is getting the animal shelter out of where it is. It's just a terrible location down there. It's really, I get why it was there, but it'd be great to be able to move it up to the Jablonski Center, where again it's just much more central located, and again, just we'll be able to maintain it, I think, a little easier than keeping it where it is. I think that's something that we have to do. And I really do appreciate the fact of the connection with the fuel tanks. My only question with that now, so as we're going, as we're living through natural disasters, everything that's going on, will that be our only outdoor fuel tank in town, if that's where we move it to? I don't know if you can answer that or if someone else can answer that.
I think I'll lean on Donald or Jeffrey.
Because my only,
But I think it was central, yep.
yeah, my only concern, obviously, we kind of need to have more than one, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's been looked into, for the simple fact that what happens if a storm goes through the center of town?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we also have WPC that has a smaller tank, but we do have that ability to go down there, all the departments go down there. And we're also looking at just having some like fuel cards or something like that we could use locally.
I got it, perfect.
In that instance. Yes.
Appreciate it. And my last question, Mr. Allen, so I agree with you that I think the key point of your presentation, which may have not been emphasized because I know you have a ton to show, is the 24-hour operation at the Jablonski Center. How important that is to not only safety, but really is, the town is a 24-hour operation 7 days a week. And when you looked at this, do we currently have the IT, I'm sorry if I'm using wrong terminology, the connectivity where it can be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Or would that be part of any kind of upgrade as you see as we move forward?
I think your town staff does an excellent job of making it work. I think that's the most honest answer I can give you. They do a great job of making it 24. It can only get better, both from a functional standpoint, but also from, as you said, the IT, but everything from fiber to antennas to connectivity. Again, that's why I think this needs to be carefully planned over at least a year time frame, and then carefully constructed and sequenced so that it doesn't interrupt the 24/7 and comes online by phase. So there's a lot of planning to do, and yes, that is I think that the core, the spirit of the operation. It's a 24/7. Folks are there all the time. It can function all the time. So, so yes, thank you. Yep.
So I'm good. Any other questions from anyone? Mr. Ireland, if you have any closing comments, I want to make sure I appreciate the fact that you still got a few minutes. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to say.
I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you again for having me. I think we're enthusiastic about moving it forward. The next steps are to now refine the budget and continue the outreach to the public. So, so again, thank you, and it's great to be here.
So just so you know, obviously barring what's happening with the pandemic, our goal is we usually, like last year we started the budget, we're hoping to do the same thing in early winter. So this will be happening fairly quickly, just so you know. So meaning conversations of what or what not will be in the capital budget next year. So kind of give you a little idea of our timing.
Sounds great.
Sir, I first of all appreciate you being here. Great presentation. And again, a kudos to the committee members, to everyone who serves on this committee. A fantastic presentation. And my last question, will this be on our website for people to able to access?
You have a copy of it via already, exactly what you saw this evening. So I think it's ready to go.
So Chris, I don't know if Chris is on. Chris, under the town manager page where we normally put these presentations, will that be there?
Yes.
Great. Perfect. Mr. Ireland, again, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Take
sir.
care.